ESPN Pensacola 94.5.
Now there's more fun for everyone at IP. The beautiful Bayview Cafe is here, open 24 hours, 7 days a week. You can dine anytime and meet up with friends for wine tasting at 850 Wine and Spirits. Plus, if you love sports, IP Sportsbook is where the action is, and now taking wagers. Better up.
IP Casino Resort and Spa. It's fun for everyone.
Hear ye, I bringeth thee a message from... a message from the king and his new trumpeter, Stephen. The king wishes me to convey his favour to thine team and thine tailgate. Not yet. He invites thee to let the Bud Light flow forth. And he also wishes me to tell thee that he toasts thee... Waiteth until the end, Stephen! With game day's favourite light lager and the slogan of his kingdom... Oh! Dilly Dilly! Enjoy responsibly. Bud Light Beer, AB, St. Louis, Missouri.
This is Pensacola's hometown all-sports station and home of the Blue Wahoos, ESPN Pensacola 94.5. Catch all the Wahoos games home and away all season, plus all the latest Wahoos news from Chad Brilliante on the Sports Drive, 5 till game time weeknights. And hey, if your business would like to partner with us as an advertiser or with a local sports promotion, then give us a call at 850-262-6000 or shoot us an email from the advertise page on ESPNpensacola.com.
All sports, all the time. ESPN Pensacola 94.5 WYCT Pensacola.
The following has been produced by Talk Football LLC. Former Florida Gators quarterback, NFL quarterback, and NFL head coach. Coach K. Stevenson has a resume second to none, and now he's sharing his insider information with you. Talk Football with Coach K starts right now on ESPN Pensacola 94.5.
Football with Coach K, ESPN Pensacola 94.5. Joe Ford and legendary Coach K. Stevenson in studio as we're getting you ready for the football season as we are into week one of the preseason now. A full slate of games going to get kicked off at around 6 o'clock this evening. And getting our first look at some of the top rookies in the NFL. College football gets ever so closer. A lot to talk about as far as college football is concerned today. Dabo Swinney making some headlines. We'll hear what he has to say not only about one of his own former players, but also about Alabama, of course, coming off of the big win in the national championship game last season. And big trade in the NFL, and that's where we're going to start today's show. Coach, a few weeks ago, it was made known by Duke Johnson, the now former Cleveland Browns running back, that he wanted to trade as he just didn't see a future with the Cleveland Browns. Baker Mayfield got a little bit of heat for the comments that he had on Duke Johnson, but it's a situation that's worked out as the Cleveland Browns today trading a conditional third-round pick to the Houston Texans for Duke Johnson. So Duke goes to the Texans. The Cleveland Browns get themselves an additional draft pick. And, Coach, my first reaction to this is I think it's a win-win for all parties involved. The Texans were a team that needed a running back. They have Lamar Miller. They let Dante Foreman go, the former second-round pick out of the University of Texas. So now in steps Duke Johnson, not as a feature back, but I think that the Texans are going to have a pretty hefty role for him this coming season, kind of a tandem pairing with Lamar Miller, and the Cleveland Browns are able to get an additional draft pick for 2020 as the rebuild is ongoing. You know, a lot of the guys that the previous regime drafted have found their way out. It's a new age in Cleveland with the general manager, the head coach, new quarterback, new wide receivers, but Duke Johnson, I think, is landing in a pretty favorable spot for him.
Well, I think it's good for Cleveland, too, because they set a certain tone and emphasize that things are going to be done a certain way. And Duke Johnson, I think, had maybe worn his welcome out in Cleveland. I think it's good for them from a discipline standpoint and get everything off on the right foot and probably, like you say, probably good for Houston too. Houston could use, of all the teams, Houston could use some depth there anyway.
Yeah, and Duke is not necessarily the guy that's gonna ground and pound between the tackles. Cleveland like to use him as kind of that hybrid pass catching type back that has become so prevalent now in the NFL. And Houston, apart from DeAndre Hopkins, has really had nothing but question marks as far as pass catchers go. They have a couple of wide receivers. Will Fuller, I know, is a guy that they really like. They took him out of Notre Dame a few years ago. He's been injured on and off the field. So Duke Johnson's a guy that they can put in the slot. They can send him out in pass formations in the pass routes out of the backfield.
Yeah, he's a versatile back.
Yeah.
There's no question about that.
Yeah, so
none whatsoever.
Duke Johnson on his way to Houston. Expect a pretty big role for him. As the Texans look to integrate him with week 1 of the preseason now getting underway tonight. The San Francisco 49ers, we talked about injury concerns yesterday, a couple of high-profile cases. Antonio Brown, of course, already dealing with problems with his feet. And the top draft pick for the 49ers, Nick Bosa, defensive end out of Ohio State, according to general manager John Lynch, has a significant ankle sprain. He will not participate in all of the preseason. Coach, he was the number 2 overall pick. He was signed into camp, I think, just last week or a couple of weeks ago, so he hasn't had a whole lot of time integrating with his team. But
this is an interesting injury. All right, there's some things surrounding this. Okay, I can go back to my history in camp. First and foremost, you've got a young guy that you've drafted high, and I don't care what situation, you want him to be able to play in preseason. And now, according to the report, he's going to be out for all of preseason. He's got a severe high ankle sprain. Those things linger.
Yeah,
they linger. I'm very concerned because he, maybe other than the highly skilled positions, more leverage and push off that ankle is probably necessary for a pass rusher than maybe anywhere else on the football team. So this is one that could linger. They definitely are not keeping him out because they feel like he may get hurt. They're not doing that. A young guy like that needs all the reps that they can get him, realistically get him in preseason. So he's hurt, and he's one of those, like right now, we got to keep an eye on him, Luck, just there are 4 or 5 that are really this could linger on.
Well, and unfortunately for Bosa too, this is not a situation where he has been injury free throughout his career, and this is just something that's happened. Once he gets to the NFL, he missed the vast majority of Ohio State's season last year. He had a core muscle injury against TCU early in the season last year, so he was out for the rest of the year. He missed most of the 49ers offseason program with a hamstring injury, and he also had an ACL tear in high school. Mm-hmm. So yesterday we talked about kind of that history that once, twice, 3 times, and so on, so forth, and so on. And again, he plays at an injury where that the lower body is so crucial. Getting that push off the line and in the 3 stance, and all of the injuries that he suffered are having to do with that lower body, and that's troubling.
It's absolutely, it's essential that they get him totally well, because if they try to Band-Aid approach throughout the year, just get him feeling better, and then he will definitely keep it in bad shape the rest of the year. That's just the way those injuries go. I know anytime we had a severely injured ankle, we kept him off of it for a while and had some rehab things, which I won't go into. But then again, we didn't put him on the field again for quite a while. We had other things that we did with him, and the next thing that he will get to, the next stage, is a non-impact bicycle riding type thing. Those. So anyway, it's something they're going to have to really be careful with. Yeah.
Miami Dolphins announced the signing of defensive end Robert Nkemdiche today. They immediately went ahead and activated him to their PUP list, the physically unable to perform list. Here's a guy in Nkemdiche who, I recall, Coach, his time at Ole Miss, especially his true freshman season. He was a very highly touted prospect coming out of high school. He may have been the number one prospect, if I'm not.
I think he was.
Yeah, he was up there for sure. Went to Ole Miss. I don't know that he necessarily lived up to those expectations. At least, not for the second and third years, but the first year, if I recall, he was pretty outstanding. Had some character issues kind of crop up. Probably didn't get drafted as high as you would have thought when he was playing at Ole Miss. He was the 29th overall pick back in 2016. So the Arizona Cardinals, they let him go. There were reports that he showed up out of shape, maybe not putting in the work, maybe not putting in the effort that they would expect. But now he's in with the Dolphins coach, and curious your thoughts both on the Cardinals' decision letting him go, but also the Dolphins' decision to pick him up as a head coach. Maybe Brian Flores thinks that the kind of system, the kind of structure that he's used to coming from the Patriots, maybe he can whip up a guy into shape. But my question, Coach, is do coaches kind of think that way? Hey, if this guy was with me, he would be different. I mean, is that a...
Yeah. There are coaches that feel that way. There are, I'd say the sad thing is there are people in a position of acquiring talent, and they're not coaches on the field. General manager, let's say, who has the right or has the authority to go bring somebody in without talking to coaches.
Right.
Now, here's a good example. If they bring the guy in and say, our coaches can make it happen, and they talk to the coaching staff and say, hey, we're bringing so-and-so in, he's a problem here, problem there, make sure you whip him into shape, and he'll really help us. Now, the problem is it's unlikely, and you can go back to what was his name with the Redskins, we got from the Titans.
Oh, Albert
Hainsworth. Once if they've got that type approach to football, football's not important to him. I can tell you, it's something else, and eating probably part of it. But he's not going to be what Miami wants, I don't think. Now, if they do get him to perform up to the standard that they probably have, then more power to him. But it's not likely that that's going to happen. Your question was, do some coaches think they can make those things happen? And the answer is yes.
The thing is that in the NFL, talent is ultimately going to trump everything else. If your talent outweighs or is greater than the risk, greater than the distraction, NFL teams will put up with a lot. History has shown us that. So for the Dolphins, you can kind of look at it as a case where there's pretty low risk. To bring on a guy who was a former first-round draft pick. But again, we've seen too often where, the common denominator for guys like this, the type that just never really seem to figure out, whether it's the lifestyle, whether it's the work ethic, whatever it is, they bounce around from team to team. I'm sure there's a case where, if this guy was in our environment, if he is in our culture, then we could make him, something that he hasn't shown to be. And very rarely, if ever, I can think of a case where it's worked out that way.
Well, you hit on something interesting there, in that Miami really is not. It's not a big risk for them, so they might as well do it. Now, the problem could be what distraction he might cause in your locker room or whatever during the time that he's there. If you suspect that there's anything going on there, then you got to get him out of there as quickly as possible. If you feel that maybe he can get himself into shape and eventually be a role player for you, then you try to rehabilitate him and get him to do that. Chances are it's not going to happen. But the big downside, Joe, would be him creating a distraction in your locker room.
The New Orleans Saints in the news, nothing at all on-field related, but if you've been following this at all, this all goes back to the NFC Championship game, the no-call pass interference involving the Los Angeles Rams cornerback Nickel Roby-Coleman that kind of helped set up the Rams for their field goal to go on and win the game. So a fan or a group of fans got involved with a lawyer, and they decided to sue the NFL. Now this case has kind of been bouncing around the different courts in the state of Louisiana, and it's gotten this all the way now to the Louisiana Supreme Court, where the NFL is asking the state Supreme Court to basically stop the legal proceedings in this lawsuit. My understanding, Coach, and kind of having read through this a little bit, is I think, the most, because it is a civil case, I think the maximum penalty that if this particular group, this lawyer, Tony Lemon is his name, he is a Saints fan and he's attorney. He's putting in this lawsuit here. I think the maximum penalty, the damages that he would be able to win would be around $70,000 that he said that he would donate to charity. So financially standpoint, he's not seeking a way to necessarily gain financially from this, but we're talking about him. We're talking about this case, and I think everybody would agree that this is just a complete waste of time. This is not how the legal system is, designed or structured. We're not supposed to be worried about this. Get over it, right? So the NFL and the New Orleans Saints now are filing in the court in Louisiana to basically get the state Supreme Court to stop it. The Saints themselves saying, hey, enough is enough. We want to move on. The NFL clearly wants to move on. They Roger Goodell, the game officials, a court in Louisiana a couple of weeks ago said, hey, you guys have to be deposed in this case. And the NFL certainly wasn't going to stand for that. I don't think there's any way this happens, but I think most Saints fans have gotten over this. I would hope so. I certainly think that the team has moved past it. We've talked to Mickey Loomis. All the conversation around the Saints has moved on to 2019. It's no longer an inkling in their mind, but Coach, just an interesting story in the off season where we have lawsuits. We have the NFL, who's no stranger to lawsuits, but they want it to go away. I think this is where it's headed.
I hope they come back with a countersuit on a frivolous lawsuit. Yeah. There are laws in certain states now about filing what is called a frivolous lawsuit. Now, I'm not an attorney, don't pretend to be, but I agree with you. I think it's ridiculous. It's part and parcel of the game. Not everything about what we do in life is going to be perfect. And there are rules and regulations, and there are times that certain things happen that we feel the league or the team or the game should have remedied and not let it happen. But it's a part of the game. What the heck? What are you going to do? What would be the final outcome? Could you possibly gain with this approach to football? Are they going to go back and replay that ball game? No. Okay. Well, so anyway, I agree with you. I think it's something that'll just go away.
Yeah, punter Thomas Morstead took to Twitter to say, quote, "I've read about this no-call litigation, and my message to the fans is that it's time to move on. We can't let courts and judges decide our contest played on the field. Our focus is on tomorrow night and the upcoming season." For the record, the lawsuit would, for any money that may come out of this, would go to Steve Gleason's charity to help people with ALS. So I think a noble gesture may be an agreement to do away with the lawsuit, and in turn, maybe the Saints or the NFL kick in, the amount of money that they can, or even go above that, to say, hey, we're dismissing the lawsuit. It's over. It happened. We're not going to replay it. We're not going to do anything else, but we're going to make a donation to the charity that.
The only problem there is you just invite 50,000 other people to go file a frivolous lawsuit.
Yeah,
and
I may file a couple.
Yeah, sure. So it's no. I think just let it fade away. It's doomed to that. It never should have happened to begin with.
Yeah. Well, coming up, we're going to go ahead and take a timeout. Coming up, we're going to switch gears to college football. Look at some interesting comments that Coach Dabo Swinney had to say about a former player, and then also his take on the Crimson Tide, both looking back and looking forward. We'll get into that next. Talk football with Coach K, ESPN Pensacola 94.5.
When you're looking for a great deal on a reliable new or certified pre-owned vehicle, you can't beat Bob Tyler Toyota in Car City, Pensacola. Bob Tyler Toyota has the best selection in town at incredible low prices. You can check out their amazing inventory from Camrys to Tundra trucks to 4Runners. It's all at Bob Tyler Toyota, and you can find it online at bobtylertoyota.com. Also score a touchdown this football season with the car of your dreams. Again, it's only at Bob Tyler Toyota in Car City, Pensacola.
I'm attorney Stephen Luongo with Levin, Papantonio, Thomas, Mitchell, Rafferty, and Proctor in Pensacola, Florida. Distracted driving is a dangerous epidemic on America's roadways. In 2016 alone, over 3,000 people were killed in motor vehicle crashes involving distracted drivers. This according to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. For more information, please visit us today online at levinlaw.com. Please be safe on the roadways. Stop the text, stop the wrecks.
Sometimes your bank, your family, and your friends love you, but they don't have the money to help you. Sometimes we have chances to make money, but the old saying, you've got to have money to make money, rings true. At Pensacola Specialty Pond, we can help. If you have trucks, heavy equipment, airplanes, boats, jet skis, anything with value, Pensacola Specialty Pond can loan you that short-term money you need. No credit checks, and at Pensacola Specialty Pond, you're going to find the money and the discretion you need.
Now at 6428 Pensacola Boulevard, north of Car City. Call 432-9050, 432-9050.
New Shell V-Power Nitro Plus Premium Gasoline not only helps keep your engine running like new, it can also help you win big. When you fill up as a Fuel Rewards member, you'll be automatically entered in the Shell Great Gas giveaway after purchasing 8 gallons or more, where you can win one of thousands of prizes, including free fuel for a year. To join, download the Fuel Rewards app or go to fuelrewards.com/win. In engines that continuously use Shell V-Power Nitro Plus Premium Gasoline. No purchase necessary. Motion ends 9/1/19. See official rules at fuelrewards.com/win for how to enter by mail and all details.
All right, it's time for some straight talk. You wouldn't pay $100 for seats to a baseball game where you can get the same seats for $50. So why pay more on your wireless when you can get the same 4G LTE networks for up to half the cost? For $45 a month, get our unlimited plan with 25 gigs of high-speed data from Straight Talk Wireless. No contract, only at Walmart.
Savings may vary. See terms and conditions at straighttalk.com.
Don't drop the ball this football season. Make Tom Thumb your game day destination. We are your first round pick for snacks, chips, dips, and drinks. Are you tailgating before the game? Don't get blindsided. Head to Tom Thumb for all your supplies. Score big savings with our rewards card. You'll earn 4 fuel points for every dollar spent in store. From hot dogs and buns to ice and propane, Tom Thumb has you covered to help you enjoy the game. For the ultimate game day, team up with Tom Thumb, the local store for local champions.
Talk football with Coach K. Happy Thursday. ESPN Pensacola 94.5. Joe Ford along with you as we're switching gears now to some college football talk. If you want to weigh in on anything we are discussing, the number 972-1945. Dabo Swinney, couple of interesting comments here that we want to dive into. There's a little, I guess you would call it, faux controversy about whether or not former quarterback Kelly Bryant, who's now with the Missouri Tigers, of course, should get or should not get a national championship ring from last season. Kelly Bryant started in 4 games. Then the job was given over to Trevor Lawrence, and Kelly Bryant, I believe, I have no reason to say otherwise, was not forced out of Clemson, but rather made the decision on his own to transfer and leave the program. So there's 2 ways to kind of go about this. Number 1, he made the choice to leave the team. He should not get a national championship ring. The other argument would be he was a part of the team. They were 4-0 with him as the starting quarterback. Nice gesture maybe to just say, hey, we know you transferred. You had to do what's best for you. Here's a championship ring. Thank you for all your contributions, not only for last year, but, kind of steering the ship, the year before, where Clemson was able to make a run towards the title. But Dabo coming out saying, quote, he was not on the team. You've got to be on the team to get a ring. I love Kelly and appreciate what he did for us, but he decided to move on. So I guess, people taking sides, oh, he deserves a ring, just give it to him, or no, he's, Dabo's right. So that was one of the interesting things, Coach. I don't know if you had a thought on this, if you side with Dabo on this, or...
I can see both sides, really.
Yeah.
And I think if you just took the course of least resistance, do what you said there, just go ahead and get him a ring. Nobody would know that there's a downside to that. But get him a ring, and then you avoid any controversy, and you leave a good taste in his mouth, and those that know him, and those that he could influence later on from a recruiting standpoint.
Yeah.
So my gut feel is unless he did something that was detrimental to the program, then in that case, I could see not giving him a ring if he bad-mouthed players or coaches or whatever the program of the school.
Yeah.
But we don't know that, so which Dabo may know.
Right.
He may know something we don't know.
Yeah, and the thing is that I'm sure Dabo would, may say is that, well, you talk about, detrimental to the program. And again, we're just talking here, but, this isn't anything that Dabo has said, but you could make the argument, well, the fact that he didn't just, kind of take it as far as the benching is concerned is the fact that 4 games into the season, he left. So that, I think, could be construed as detrimental.
and there's an example of a class way to handle everything.
Jalen Hurts.
Jalen Hurts
Absolutely.
is the prime example.
Yeah.
Now, here's a kid that had done more for the University of Alabama than was done for Clemson.
Mm.
Okay? But he took the ethical road of staying there, not leaving anybody in a lurch, accepting a backup role, being prepared every week, being a good teammate, all the things that you would ask, that you would hope somebody would do. You couldn't necessarily force them to or ask them to because it takes a special person to do that. He did it.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the blueprint for how you should handle it. And obviously it was not handled that way. Now, I don't care how you cut it. It was not handled that way. The guy left them, period. Would they have liked to have had him do what Jalen Hurts did and give him some comfort there with the depth? Yeah, you bet. But that was not going to happen. So, I'm sure there were some hard feelings about that. And certainly since they saw what Jalen Hurts did at Alabama, which could add to the whole problem there.
You know, and it's interesting about this conversation is the fact that, you know, it wasn't just Trevor Lawrence taking over, Kelly Bryant leaving, and then everything was hunky-dory for the rest of the season. I believe that the very next game after Lawrence had taken over and Kelly Bryant leave was that Lawrence was knocked out of the game. And, you know, Clemson was able to,
That's
you know,
true.
squeak by Syracuse.
Yeah.
Chase Bryce was the quarterback who took over in that ball game. Travis Etienne, you know, over 200-yard performance, really saved the Tigers that year. But, you know, you just don't really know when your number is going to be called upon. We saw it in the SEC championship game, you know, where Tua got hurt. Jalen was there to kind of, you know, take over. So, I again, I see it both ways as well. I don't necessarily fall on one side or the other. If you told me, hey, Clemson gave Kelly Bryant a ring, cool. That's
Yeah.
good story.
Same here.
And,
Yeah,
you know,
same
the
here.
fact
And
that they
same
didn't,
with,
it's
same
like,
with most people. you
yeah.
know, and okay, but it's a touchy situation. It shouldn't be.
Right. And the other thing that Dabo was kind of making headlines for, he had some comments on, going back to Alabama a few weeks ago at SEC Media Days. Nick Saban, many people I think probably took it as an excuse, where there was a lot of changes going on with the coaching staff. Coach Saban, pointed that out. Maybe I think people may have thought, myself included, to be frank, is that, Coach, just say Clemson was the way better team. They were just better that night, and they handed it to us. And, this is something that's come up with Nick Saban before. I go back to the Sugar Bowl loss against Ohio State where, the quote excuse or the reasoning why Alabama was knocked out, not able to win a championship that year was, well, we had a lot of guys that were looking ahead to the NFL draft and whatever, right? So I personally have not heard this coming from anybody affiliated with the Alabama program. This may be, circulating in the media, but kind of another reasoning why Alabama didn't perform that well was that, hey, it's because that the SEC had such a more rigorous schedule and wasn't as well rested. Again, I have not heard that from Saban. I have not heard that from anybody affiliated with Alabama.
No, I haven't either. And sometimes, people tend to exaggerate. They'll take one thing that, especially somebody in Saban's position, one little thing that he says, and maybe they'll blow it up, or they interpret it another way, and they'll blow it up. So keep that in mind. Now, listen, I will say this. I really think that coaches should be extremely cognizant of what they're going to say and be very careful about how they say it, because people are just waiting. I mean, but more so now than ever before. How many sports talk programs, internet, all the other things that you see, just waiting to pounce on any one thing they possibly can, and it's just distasteful, really. And certainly when coaches say something that others interpret, and you also have to keep in mind too, Joe, how adamant fans are now. They're just extremely pro their team, and they don't want to hear anything that would give them any grief whatsoever.
Swinney himself, in telling ESPN, saying that, hey, this is a narrative that he's heard mostly in media circles. So, again, to preface this is not a criticism on Nick Saban or anybody affiliated with the Alabama program, because I do not believe this is where it's coming from, unless somebody in the media is getting this off the record from somebody on Alabama staff. Not entirely out of the question, but I don't really believe that. But Swinney saying, quote, listen, the SEC is a great conference, but I don't think they've been as deep the last few years. I think they've had 2 or 3 really good teams, and then it's kind of been hit or miss from there. It's an awesome league for sure, and I know people say that Alabama was tired because they went through the grind and had to play all these games. Well, they won by an average of 33 points per game going into the playoffs, so they ought to be well rested.
Well, listen, I understand Sweeney having a bee in his bonnet about all this. He's not happy about anything that would cast any doubt about their national championship. Okay, so if it's demeaning the ACC in any way, he would take that as a slight, and they certainly are going to say whatever they want to in defense of their conference, and we understand that. But they have to be careful to don't go overboard, because you don't have to be a Phi Beta Kappa to understand that the ACC is not the SEC.
Right.
And not nearly. Now, there have been times when the ACC has been better than it is right now, but they're just not as deep, not as good as the SEC. Don't shy away from that. The fact is, the ball game came down to Clemson and Alabama, and Clemson dominated the ball game and won it. And just suffice it to take that to the bank, and don't worry about all the talk about the ACC and the SEC. Clemson beat Alabama, period, and that's what I think he should concentrate on, and don't because you're talking. Listen, anytime you do that, think of all the people. Just think about the people out there now that you're not. You're getting on their bad side. Okay, they don't appreciate you talking about something that they feel very deeply about, and there's no reason to do that. My goodness, if somebody gave you a chance tomorrow to say you're going to coach a football team and win the national championship, but you can't talk about the conference that the other team came from, would you take that? Oh my goodness, you'd take that and you'd sign that contract today.
And I think there may even be just a little bit of, I wouldn't say jealousy, but frustration over the fact that, especially coming off of a 44-16 win against Alabama, is that, I think Swinney may still feel somewhat disrespected. Clemson, as a football program, may feel slightly disrespected because I think in a lot of people's minds, Alabama is still the top dog.
Yeah, and I can understand that, but listen, still it goes back to one-on-one, head-to-head.
Yeah.
How do we stand? And that's the bottom line right now. And I would certainly tutor anybody to take that approach and not delve into something else. And I can understand the point, and that maybe he feels a little disrespected, but I'll tell you one team that doesn't feel disrespected anymore as of right now is Iowa State.
Yeah, and that's what we're going to get into next, Coach. Now, every year around this time, that there's a handful of programs that we like to look to as, hey, what are surprise teams look like? What are teams that are going to far surpass our expectations? Maybe even be a surprise contender for conference championships, playoff consideration. Iowa State is, I wouldn't say at the level of, say, like a Utah, a team like that, that's sitting pretty high. Although, Iowa State is ranked fairly high for what they're used to. But Coach, you've been talking to a few people, and you're getting a sense that Iowa State, this isn't just, Matt Campbell. This isn't just maybe a favorable schedule, but Iowa State, they've kind of turning things around a little bit. Their schedule looks pretty favorable in terms of games that they get home versus away. This is a team that legitimately has a shot, not just to make some noise, but to actually win the Big 12 conference.
Let me say this, and we realize there's not an awful lot of interest in this area about Iowa State, but we would be remiss if we don't at least fill you in on some things that we've heard that could eventually during this year, this college season,
impact an SEC team.
Yeah, could impact the whole college football world, because there is a chance that they could be a playoff contender. Let's put it that way. Now, what I'm hearing is that this football team is extremely deep. They have a defense that is designed, they feel that they've worked on this quite extensively, a defense designed to stop this quick, no-huddle, up-tempo offense, okay? They have no fear of that whatsoever. They can run all day with people. Their defense should be one of the top defenses in the country. They have a good quarterback situation. They have one of the best coaching staffs in the country. Matt Campbell is going to be highly sought after, and I would think by maybe some large traditional football schools.
We may be talking about him in the SEC next year.
Oh, absolutely. So keep in mind, keep that coach's name in mind, Matt Campbell, the Iowa State Cyclones, and what I'm hearing from people that have watched them and been looking at film too, because they grade their people. They're a good football team, and there's no turning back on that. Plus the fact that's interesting in the Big 12 now, we all say, Oklahoma, Texas, Texas, and rightfully so. But there is another team in the Big 12, in addition to Iowa State, that could be a major factor in college football this year, and that's TCU. TCU's got a good program. They've been down for a couple of years, 2 or 3 years, but they've got a good coach, and they have recruited well over the last 3 years, last 2 in particular. So TCU could be back in the running. Now, this could affect, too. TCU could positively affect Iowa State, because if you get another team in there that could knock somebody off, it may prove to be advantageous for Iowa State, may move them up in the standings, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And having, personally spent some time around the Iowa State program, I lived for a couple of years about an hour away from the Iowa State campus. I certainly don't need to lecture anybody around here on rivalry games.
Yeah.
But I would say that, one of the more underappreciated rivalry games is that Iowa State game. And I think it's because the fact that, people don't pay attention to it because it's not on the national scale. So, I don't expect anybody around here to get riled up about Iowa State. But in that state, man, it is intense. It is, it's everything shuts down. Everybody's either wearing red, maroon, or gold, and it's a really nice springboard into the season for really whoever wins this game, because it's not like the traditional rivalry game that happens towards the end of the year. I mean, they're going to play in week 2 because they don't want to kind of get in the way of the conference schedules. But Iowa and Iowa State gets Iowa at home this year. I know Iowa's beaten them, I think, probably 4 years in a row, if I'm not mistaken. It's been a while, but Iowa State also gets TCU at home. They get Texas at home. Iowa State will have to travel to Oklahoma, so that'll be a big game. But you can't tell me that folks around here aren't going to want to keep tabs on Jalen Hurts over at Jalen Hurts, how he's doing at Oklahoma. So Iowa State, it's...
well, as the season goes, here's what happens. Yeah, we know most of the emphasis is going to be on Florida State, Auburn, Alabama, LSU, and so on in this area. But as the season goes on, and the reason we mentioned so prominently today Iowa State, and even throw TCU in the mix, but especially Iowa State, is because if they should get on this winning run here, they could be a factor in whatever happens to Alabama, Auburn, Florida State, anybody who might be in the picture. So they could be a major player this year in college football. Which there's another factor here involved, Joe, and that is they've never been before.
Yeah.
So now all of a sudden you're inserting something totally different in the picture, which may make it interesting. And you'd be surprised how many people around here would get very interested in Iowa State should that scenario come to pass.
Absolutely. So college football celebrating its 150th birthday this year. Didn't know if you knew that, but my favorite road to travel down is memory lane, and we're going to do that next. Looking at the most iconic moments in college football history. This will be fun. We'll do that next. Talk football with Coach K on a Thursday, ESPN Pensacola 94.5.
I'm attorney Stephen Luongo with Levin, Papantonio, Thomas, Mitchell, Rafferty, and Proctor in Pensacola, Florida. Distracted driving is a dangerous epidemic on America's roadways. In 2016 alone, over 3,000 people were killed in motor vehicle crashes involving distracted drivers. This according to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. For more information, please visit us today online at levinlaw.com. Please be safe on the roadways. Stop the text, stop the wrecks.
When you're looking for a great deal on a reliable new or certified pre-owned vehicle, you can't beat Bob Tyler Toyota in Car City, Pensacola. Bob Tyler Toyota has the best selection in town at incredible low prices. You can check out their amazing inventory from Camrys to Tundra trucks to 4Runners. It's all at Bob Tyler Toyota, and you can find it online at bobtylertoyota.com. Also score a touchdown this football season with the car of your dreams. Again, it's only at Bob Tyler Toyota in Car City, Pensacola.
And now, the worst commercial ever.
As a real-life caterer, my recipe for success is a heaping helping of commercial, auto, and business insurance through Progressive. They helped whip up a customized insurance solution that keeps my business cooking.
That barrage of bad wordplay was most unpleasant. Whereas commercial auto and business insurance through Progressive is anything but. Visit progressivecommercial.com to quote today. Insurance provided and serviced by Progressive Casualty Insurance Company. Its affiliated and third-party insurers.
Valvoline is the only motor oil brand with a dedicated engine lab. And here, we test everything. We test seal conditioners to keep older engines from leaking. We test detergents to help reduce soot. We test additives that protect against wear, increase fuel economy, and fight carbon buildup. Why? Because we won't settle for being less than the best, and you shouldn't either. Valvoline, trusted for 150 years. Now at Advanced Auto Parts, buy Valvoline Full Synthetic High Mileage with Max Life technology and a filter for only $33.99. See store for restrictions and details.
At Indeed, we understand that when it comes to hiring, it's important to have a large talent pool to choose from. But sometimes too many good options can be overwhelming. That's why Indeed doesn't just give you access to a large pool of job seekers. We also offer screener tools that let you instantly narrow down your search. Hone in on hiring with Indeed. Experience Indeed for yourself today and get a free sponsored job upgrade on your first posting at Indeed.com/promo. Terms and conditions apply.
Hello, sports fans. Miles Bentley here, General Manager at Hill Kelly Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram in Pensacola. Growing up, I always loved sports. Nothing but net, out of the park, through the uprights. Sink the puck Bentley, that was me. But my love of the game couldn't beat my love for Pensacola and helping folks get on the road of dreams in a new Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram. Sure, I never went to the big leagues in sport, but we're all pro here at Hill Kelly Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram. Proud to be in Pensacola.
Talk football with Coach K, ESPN Pensacola 94.5. The phone number 972-1945. 972-1945. In just a moment, man, the nostalgia that I get when I hear that music. College football celebrating its 150th birthday. We're going to be looking at some of the most iconic moments of the past 20, 25 years or so in the world of college football, and that's going to be fun. One quick note, Coach, you were scouring through the newspapers and the internet and all that. Tom Brady, we were just talking a couple days ago about his contract situation. Got an extension that makes him the sixth highest paid quarterback this year. A few days after that, though, putting his house up for sale.
Well, there's a lot of talk about it right now, and I don't think there's too much to it. But at any rate, here's what you have to look at before we get to the college highlights here. One, New England, Belichick is absolutely famous for not going too far with players, and you can name them whether it's receivers or especially receivers or backs or anybody. When they get to a certain point where he feels like they've pretty much extended their football life, he usually gets rid of them before that point and goes in another direction. And I think that's what he had in mind. Maybe it's at one point. Thank goodness for the Patriots, he didn't do it. But at any rate, people are saying, what is he going to do? Will he get rid of Brady here this last year and move in another direction? I don't think that'll ever happen. Personally, I think there's too much. And Brady is still a hell of a football player.
Yeah.
I don't care what people say. He may be positioning himself, for a little power play himself. Put his house on the market. Maybe they want another house, different type house. Maybe it's too big. Maybe they want to downsize or whatever. But there could be a lot of reasons. I think there probably is an ulterior motive there for doing it.
Yeah.
But we'll find out. I don't think there's too much we should worry about there. I think Brady will be with the Patriots as long as he wants.
Absolutely. So, college football coach, this is what I'm going to do here. I'm just going to tell you the year, and you see if you can guess what if the year brings up any memories of iconic moments that happened. So the first one, number one on this list, again, the most iconic moments in college football history. This one in 2006.
I'm probably the world's worst at putting a date to events, but I'm wondering if it's the.
Well, here it is. See if this brings it to your memory.
Okay, Texas.
There you go.
Texas and
USC. So Vince Young on 4th and 5, taking Texas home against arguably one of the top college football teams of all time.
Yeah. That was a huge night for Texas and for Vince Young and that play in particular.
Now this one I had forgotten about. This coming from the year, just the next year, 2007. But when I heard this, absolutely I agree. And this one, Tom Brenneman on the call. This is when Fox was had the BCS games. Oklahoma, Boise State. The Statue of Liberty.
The statue play, yeah.
Yeah, that one really what took Boise State into that next level. Boise State thought of as a could be a giant beater, and that time they really kind of became the giant beater in that one. The next one, this was another Keith Jackson highlight, 1991. Unfortunately, against my Buckeyes in the game, Michigan's Desmond Howard with his "Hello Heisman" pose. Keith Jackson on the call of that one as well. Coach, this one you probably very familiar with here. This was in 1982.
Harmon will probably try to squib it, and he does. Ball comes loose, and the Bears have to get out of bounds. Rodgers along the sideline, another one. They're still in deep trouble at midfield. They tried to do a couple of... The ball is still loose.
You're talking about the Stanford, California game?
Yes, sir.
Oh, yeah. The band on the field, I guess.
The euphoria of the announcer there.
Yeah. What an ending that was.
No way that happens in today's day and age. That would have been overturned because the guy's knee was down. But, hey, the human element, right? In baseball, we love the human element. And if there was instant replay, if they had the HD cameras back in 1982, society, we here today are robbed of that big moment here. Now, the plays that we've already talked about, are arguably one of the most iconic plays in college football history. Nobody can dispute that, except for maybe about 3.5 hours to the north of us. The Auburn fans may have something to say.
Yeah, this is the missed field goal.
Yeah.
56-yarder.
Returned all the way.
No, does not have the leg. And Chris Davis takes it in the back of the end zone. He'll run it out to the 10.
Well, you
15,
talk about shock.
20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 45. There goes Davis. Oh, my God. Davis is going to run it all the way back. Auburn's going to win the football game. Auburn's going to win the football game. He ran the missed field goal back. He ran it back 109 yards.
Yeah, that was.
They're not going to keep him off
That
the
was
field.
unbelievable. You see quite a bit of that, oddly enough, in Canadian Football League.
Yeah.
But you don't in the U.S. We just don't, all the bigger guys are on the field goal and extra point teams. They don't cover as well, and you don't teach that much. You don't put time into coverage because it's so unusual that you would entertain that type situation. But just goes to show you better cover everything.
Another one here. This is a little bit further down the list, but I want to get your thoughts on this. Did you personally know Woodrow Hayes?
No,
Okay.
I did not. I
also known as Woody.
Yeah, I did not personally know him. No.
You undoubtedly saw this though. The 78. What was it? The
Gator
Bowl.
I was down there, oddly enough, on Clemson's campus working out, looking at some players, and in fact was at this ball game.
You were?
Yeah.
Okay.
When this happened.
Did you see it happen, or were you kind of confused, or
there was so much traffic down there. You did. Until you saw a replay of it, you really didn't know what.
So when you saw the replay,
yeah,
your reaction to that?
Well, it was totally uncalled for. You can't.
Did you know? Did you know? I mean, at the time, that you're like, oh my God, this is like this is going to be something that 50 years from now we're going to be talking about. This is one of the most iconic moments. I mean, or was it just kind of like, hey, he punched a player?
Yeah,
probably.
That's pretty much it. And knowing Woody. But I said I didn't really know him, knew of him by reputation, and so on. A lot of people that worked with him, but it was not unheard of. Whether it's Woody Hayes or Bobby Knight, or there were some others that would come pretty close.
A couple other ones. Now, the SEC championship game, 1992, the first SEC title game. I think was one of those seismic moves, generational move. The foresight that the SEC had to institute the conference championship game. It has become such an institution. It is one of the most watched games. I think it's probably the only college football game that's not a bowl game that figures into the the TV ratings.
No question about it. It's huge. Yeah.
And then wide right. So many instances.
Yeah.
Florida State wide right. You have 1 and 2 in 91 and 92. And then there was also a couple of wide lefts. I know in the early 2000s that that kept Florida State from beating Miami as well. So sorry to bring that up as well to the Florida State fans. Nebraska back in their heyday, they went for 2 against Miami. And I think this may have been the Fumblerooski, if I'm not mistaken. But Nebraska went for 2 in the Orange Bowl to beat Miami for the national championship. Wasn't able to pull it off.
Doug Flutie's last minute Hail Mary's got to be in there.
Yes,
got to
sir.
be in there somewhere.
It is there. Yeah, the Flutie's miracle in Miami there. The pass interference call against Ohio State, Miami and Ohio State in that controversial national championship game. One off the field moment though, I would not have probably thought of this as one of the most iconic moments in college football, but Tim Tebow, his promise following the loss to Ole Miss, he promised them and he delivered And what a great moment that was. I don't know if have you seen the movie, Coach, We Are Marshall?
No, I've heard quite a bit about it.
But yeah, that was on there as well. Being a guy, in my, I'm 32 years old. I would not have known really about the Marshall plane crash if it wasn't for the movie. But getting to learn the history of that, and not only that, but just how the Marshall football program was able to be built. In the 80s, the 90s. My knowledge of the Marshall football program really starts with the Chad Pennington, Randy Moss team.
Yeah.
In the late, I think it was 97, I think was when they were together. Byron Leftwich followed up there. So in my mind, Marshall was always a team that to be reckoned with. They were a MAC team at the time in the late 90s. Or no, were they a MAC team? I think so. Yeah, they made the jump from Division 2 to Division 1, they were. But I knew nothing about the history of the program leading up to that. But that was one of the most iconic moments. Newt Rockne, his untimely death. So a lot of moments, and college football celebrating 150 years this year.
I'm sure they're more than we could get to in quite a few days.
Absolutely. So that's going to do it for us. We will talk to you tomorrow on a Friday. Thanks for joining us.
The Stephen A. Smith Show starts right now.
All right, hour two, Stephen A. Smith Show. Dave Rothbergen for Stephen A. You need seats to a game? Download the Vivid Seats app and enter promo code CHAMPS at checkout to get 10% off of your first order. Don't buy just any seat. Get a Vivid seat. 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. A lot of Cowboys conversation. The good thing about the Cowboys is everyone's interested. You either love them, you hate them, you can't stand them, you adore them. They're the Yankees, right? Who are those teams? It's the Cowboys. It's the Yankees. I don't think that team exists in hockey, does it? Maybe the Penguins, but I don't think at that level. Duke basketball, I think, would be of that ilk, right? Those are the teams that. It's funny. I lived in Raleigh, North Carolina for a while, and I detest the Yankees. I'm a big Mets fan, and go Mets. 13 of 14, they are, red hot, on fire. And I would be out and about and talking sports with people, and we would talk about the Yankees, and people hate the Yankees. They detest the Yankees. And I remember thinking to myself,